To audiences, Oliver Hardy was the ultimate gentleman of comedy. His delicate tight whirls, dramatic direct-to-camera stares, and on-screen pomposity turned failure into absolute gold. Together with Stan Laurel, he created an empire of laughter. But when the hot studio lights turned off, the laughter stopped instantly. Behind the heavy makeup and the iconic bowler hat was a completely different person, a quiet, deeply private individual carrying intense childhood trauma, navigating secret fraternal networks, and battling a body that felt like a cage. This is the dark, gritty truth of the man the world thought they knew. Long before he became half of the world's most famous comedy duo, Oliver Hardy was just Laurel Hardy, a lonely child growing up in Harlem, Georgia. His life was fractured early, casting a shadow that would follow him into adulthood. Before he even reached his first birthday, his father passed away, leaving his mother to raise 5 children alone in a harsh, unforgiving era. Death would visit the family again under even more horrific circumstances when a young Laurel watched his older brother tragically drown. These massive losses forced a dark cloud over his early life, turning him into a difficult, heavily guarded child who struggled to process the immense grief around him. He ran away from boarding schools and completely ignored his studies, finding his only true escape in the heavy darkness of local theaters. He took his late father's name, Oliver, as a permanent shield, completely burying his birth name and the painful past attached to it. To the locals, he was just a heavy, troubled boy who didn't fit in anywhere, a target for ridicule who seemed destined for obscurity. But beneath the surface, Oliver was intensely studying the people around him with a sharp, analytical mind. He realized that if people were laughing with you, they couldn't see your pain, and they couldn't hurt you first. He learned to use his large physical presence as a weapon and a tool, hiding his deep-seated insecurities behind a booming singing voice and a theatrical smile. He became an expert at reading the emotions of others while carefully masking his own, a survival mechanism born out of tragedy. The boy who refused to speak about his brother's death found solace in the exaggerated expressions of the early stage, realizing that a performance could keep reality at bay. But as he began to find success on the local stage, a sudden, shocking choice would leave his family wondering if they ever really knew the real Oliver at all. Why did he suddenly abandon his rising theatrical career to take a low-paying job as a janitor in a small-town movie house? In 1910, Oliver walked away from the spotlight and took a job at the Palace Theater in Milledgeville, Georgia. He wasn't the star, he was the projectionist, the ticket taker, and the janitor. He spent his days sweeping floors and cleaning up after audiences who had no idea who he was. His nights were spent locked in a dark, claustrophobic projection booth, watching silent actors move across the silver screen. He became utterly obsessed with the mechanics of visual storytelling, convinced he could do a far better job than the actors he saw on screen. He dissecting their movements, their timing, and the way the light hit their faces, turning his isolation into a masterclass in cinematic acting. This obsession drove him to Jacksonville, Florida, a hidden hub for early filmmaking before Hollywood dominated the industry. By day, he played comedic villains and thugs for Lubin Studios, utilizing his large frame to project menace and buffoonery. By night, he sang in dark cabarets to make ends meet, living an exhausting double life, working up to 18 hours a day just to keep a roof over his head. It was during this grueling period of intense physical and mental strain that he sought refuge in a secretive world, far away from the cameras and the demanding crowds. He was initiated into Solomon Lodge No. 20, entering the private world of Freemasonry. Behind those closed doors, Oliver wasn't a goofy actor or a struggling singer begging for a break. He was a brother, bound by secret oaths, handshakes, and ancient symbols. This hidden brotherhood provided the rigid stability and sense of belonging that his fractured childhood had stolen from him. But just as his secret life within the lodge began to offer him peace, a chance encounter on a movie set changed everything. He was paired with a thin, pale British comedian. Would this new partnership elevate Oliver's career, or would it completely expose the private walls he had spent years building? By 1927, Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel were officially a team at Hal Roach Studios, embarking on a journey that would redefine comedy. On screen, they were inseparable partners navigating a chaotic world, bound by a deep, unspoken loyalty. Off-screen, however, the dynamic was completely reversed and strikingly cold. Stan Laurel was the obsessive creative genius, spending nights in the editing room rewriting scripts, directing scenes, and obsessing over every frame. Oliver, conversely, was purely a contract player. The moment the director yelled, "Cut," Oliver vanished from the set entirely, showing zero interest in the writing, editing, or business processes. Instead, he slipped away to expensive golf courses, racetrack betting windows, and private Masonic meetings. He lived in a completely different social orbit than Stan, creating a stark divide between their public personas and private realities. This cold detachment puzzled studio executives and fueled intense industry rumors of a deep, bitter feud between the two stars. The public desperately believed they were best friends who shared everything, but the grim reality was that their relationship was entirely transactional during the early years, built on professional respect rather than personal affection. Oliver used golf and high-stakes gambling as an escape from the immense pressure of his screen persona, needing a space where he didn't have to be funny. He fiercely guarded his privacy, refusing to let the Hollywood machine dictating his life manipulate his true self. He wore the iconic bowler hat like a uniform, taking it off the second his shift ended to become a ghost in the very city that worshipped him. But a sudden shift in Hollywood's power dynamics would soon force Oliver out of his comfort zone. As the studio pushed them into feature-length films, Oliver's hidden financial habits and turbulent personal life were about to collide, threatening to destroy the delicate illusion of the lovable Ollie. As the 1930s progressed, Laurel and Hardy reached the absolute peak of their global fame. Films like The Music Box won Academy Awards, and their faces were recognizable across continents, icons of a golden age. Yet, behind the scenes, Oliver's personal life was falling into complete disarray, crumbling under the weight of his hidden demons. His first two marriages collapsed under the pressure of his high-stakes gambling habits and severe emotional distance. He was making thousands of dollars a week, an absolute fortune at the time, but the money slipped through his fingers at the racetrack betting windows just as fast as it came in. The oppressive studio system owned his image, and he increasingly felt like a highly paid puppet, forced to perform on command for corporate bosses. To cope with the mounting anxiety and the pain of a failing second marriage, Oliver retreated deeper into his private world. He poured his frustrations into secret Masonic projects, frequently attending meetings at Hollywood and Mount Olive lodges under strict anonymity, finding comfort in rituals that didn't require him to smile. He even inserted subtle Masonic nods into their hit film Sons of the Desert, where the characters wear fez hats to attend a secret lodge convention, a hidden joke shared only with his brothers. It was a quiet, cynical rebellion against the studio executives who thought they owned every piece of him. He was living a dual existence, a beloved global clown to millions, but a fiercely private, lonely man looking for genuine connection in secret societies. Just when Oliver thought he had successfully separated his public contract from his private life, a disastrous career move changed everything. The duo signed a new contract with a major studio that stripped them of all creative freedom. How would Oliver handle the sudden loss of the only identity he had left? In 1941, Laurel and Hardy left Hal Roach Studios and signed with 20th Century Fox and MGM. It was a catastrophic mistake that would alter the trajectory of their careers forever. The massive, rigid studio machines had absolutely no understanding of their unique, improvisational slapstick comedy style. Stan Laurel was barred from the editing room entirely, and their scripts were written by corporate writers who didn't care about the depth of their characters. The resulting films were critical and commercial disasters, labeled as some of the most embarrassing moments in cinematic history, stripping the duo of their dignity. For Stan, this was a heartbreaking betrayal of their art, but for Oliver, it was a brutal, waking nightmare. The detached objectivity he had used to protect himself for years was no longer working, he could no longer ignore the collapse of his reputation. He was forced to look at what his career had become, a running joke in an industry that was rapidly leaving them behind. The immense stress took a massive toll on his physical health. He began to gain weight rapidly, his heavy frame straining under the pressure of the grueling studio schedules and his own depression. He felt deeply trapped inside the Ollie persona, a character he now openly resented but couldn't escape because he needed the money to pay off his debts. He began to withdraw from the public eye entirely, refusing interviews and disappearing into his home for weeks at a time, hiding his deteriorating condition from the world. With their film careers completely dead and Oliver's health rapidly declining, the duo made a desperate gamble. They decided to launch a grueling live stage tour across Europe. Could Oliver's fragile body survive the intense pressure, or would this final tour expose his vulnerabilities to the entire world? The European stage tours of the late 1940s and early 1950s were both a spectacular triumph and a deeply moving tragedy. Audiences flooded the theaters, proving that the world still loved them, but behind the heavy velvet curtains, Oliver was physically falling apart. He was plagued by severe heart problems, fluid retention, and debilitating respiratory issues that made every movement an agonizing chore. Traveling by unheated trains and performing night after night in drafty theaters was slowly killing him, yet he refused to walk away from the stage. Yet, during these long, painful journeys across Europe, a profound psychological shift occurred between the two aging men. Forced into close quarters for months on end, the icy distance that Oliver had maintained for decades finally melted away completely. Oliver could no longer hide behind his private hobbies or secret networks. His vulnerability was on full display. Stan watched his partner struggle to breathe between scenes, holding oxygen masks ready in the wings, while Oliver witnessed Stan's fierce, protective loyalty as he continuously adjusted the scripts to accommodate Oliver's failing health. They were no longer just business partners bound by a contract, they had finally become the true, deeply bonded friends the public always thought they were. In 1954, they made their very last television appearance together on This Is Your Life. During the broadcast, the host publicly highlighted Oliver's lifelong Masonic membership, revealing his secret world to millions of viewers. The secret was out, but Oliver didn't care anymore. He had finally found a real, unconditional brotherhood in Stan, rendering the secret handshakes and hidden codes of his past obsolete. But this newfound bond would face the ultimate, tragic test. In a desperate bid to save his life, Oliver made a drastic medical decision that would completely alter his physical appearance. Would this final transformation save him, or would it lead to his absolute undoing? In 1956, under strict medical orders to save his failing heart, Oliver Hardy underwent a radical, desperate lifestyle change. He went on a severe, crash diet, dropping an astonishing 150 pounds in just a few short months. The physical transformation was terrifying to those who knew him. The large, imposing man who had dominated the silver screen for decades had completely vanished, leaving behind a stranger. In his place stood a frail, unrecognizable figure with loose skin, hollow cheeks, and eyes that seemed haunted by the ghost of his former self. The rapid weight loss didn't save his life, instead, it completely shocked his weakened, heavily strained system. On September 12, 1956, Oliver suffered a massive stroke that left him paralyzed and completely unable to speak. He was confined to his bed, trapped in a silent prison far worse than any silent film he had ever made during his youth. He could only communicate with his third wife, Lucille, and his beloved partner Stan through slight, agonizing movements of his eyes. The man who had used his voice and body to bring joy to millions spent his final months in total, frustrating silence. On August 7, 1957, Oliver Hardy passed away at the age of 65. His ashes were interred in the Masonic Garden at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood, surrounded by the symbols of the secret world he had cherished. Oliver Hardy spent his entire life playing a character designed to absorb the blows of a cruel world. He wore the mask of a jovial giant, hiding the grieving boy, the secret mason, and the lonely gambler from public view. If you wish to continue exploring the hidden truths behind Hollywood's golden age, consider staying tuned as we uncover the secrets of the icons who gave everything to make the world smile.